Welcome to this interview. I'm here with Adriana Timco, who is a producer of a documentary called Hell Jumper, which is now actually on BBC iPlayer. And it's about a story of a British volunteer called Chris Parry, who decides to go to Ukraine and help out when the war started. And what's really important is that it's featuring first-hand footage from the war zone that we get from Chris.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi everyone. Hi Paulina.
So this documentary has been brilliant, and especially you get to see the inside of into the people's minds, the volunteers from different countries, and what they're thinking when they go into war zones, and especially it's very impactful to see that footage. What inspired you to make this documentary, and especially what made you decide that Chris is going to be the figure?
So I'll start from the beginning, talk about my background. I was born in Moldova, but I came to Britain when I was 13 years old. So I'm British, but my roots are still in Eastern Europe. I have Ukrainian heritage. So at the beginning of the war, I was really shocked and I was really devastated. Then I just felt incredibly powerless, and I wanted to help. I wanted to help in any way I could. I was already a producer. Then I started to speak to a few people on the ground in Ukraine, and soon enough, I just started to hear about evacuators. I was interested to know who they were, what they were doing. At the beginning, it was mostly Ukrainians driving into surrounded cities, cities like Mariupol, and just getting anybody out, friends, family, but also afterwards by request. It was really, because the war advanced so quickly and happened so overnight, people found it really hard to get out by themselves. And all these young people, they were, people of all ages, but I was really impressed by so many young people decided to just get into cars and drive. We were the same age, so I always wondered if that was something that I would have been capable of doing if I was there. So I ended up speaking to a few evacuators. Then I realized that a lot of volunteers were coming from abroad, from Britain, from America, and I hadn't really heard that story before. And I was curious as to who they were, what they knew about Ukraine, and why they decided to drop everything in their lives and just go to help out. It was only actually in the autumn of 2022 that I heard of Chris, because he had kept quiet that he was there from everybody, from his friends, from his family. And then he started doing press, a few interviews for the BBC, a few articles. Then there was one article where he said he's a man with a van and he wants to help in any way he can. I found that really sweet, actually, and really charming. So I went on his Instagram. I saw that he had been posting a couple of videos of the devastation, and he seemed really just really affected by it all, and he really seemed to care. So I messaged him. He messaged me straight back saying he has a bit of internet now, so he can speak. And we had a bit of back and forth, but we formed a friendship really quickly. He sent me bits and bobs of his GoPro footage because he had been filming like other evacuators. They all have GoPro cameras on their vests. He had been filming. He both was doing it for his social media to raise funds, but he also wanted to show people in the West how horrible the devastation really was and how it was affecting ordinary people. He was a humanitarian through and through, and so we ended up chatting. He introduced me to so many other people. Then he told me, look, if anything ever happens to me, can you please try to make a film for my family? I want them to understand why I'm here.
Yeah.
And I never ever thought that that's exactly what would happen, because Chris was also had an invincible aura about him. He always said, everything's going to be all right. And I never knew where he was going, what he was doing. In fact, I became another person to worry about him in the background, because he did go to places that other people wouldn't dare to go to. Then he'd say, I go to those places because those are the most vulnerable people.
Yeah.
So
very interesting.
That's
Yes.
how it happened. That's in effect, it also fateful, in a way.
Yeah. So you said you get footage from Chris and also other volunteers had GoPros. So were you receiving footage from them as well, or?
Yeah, at the beginning, I was really curious um, to see what they saw, and really from the very beginning, their footage was extremely different to what I was seeing on the news, to all the videos coming from the army, because their footage, the footage of the volunteers, was very gentle. You know, they had
Mm,
conversations with each other. They had conversations with people. Chris always used Google Translate, and
mm,
so it just looked completely different to anything else. And they also had their own kind of unique style. Chris was particularly kind and caring. Other people were more boisterous. Others edited their videos for Instagram in a completely different way. So
mm.
they all had their own unique way of
Yeah.
shooting and also just being there.
So obviously this documentary has very intense and powerful scenes, especially the footage in the middle. So what was the hardest process of this whole production for you?
I think the most challenging aspect was sifting through all that extraordinary footage and knowing that we can't include all those 13, 14 hours because there was just so much that Chris had filmed, and that's just him, and then there were other people. So we had to be selective at the same time as we knew that we also wanted to give enough time to his footage in the film. We also interviewed so many amazing people for hours and hours and hours, and they all said incredible things. So again, being selective about what lines do we pick from each individual who unfortunately didn't make it in the film despite them being wonderful contributors, and that was the hardest bit because a lot of the contributors I consider now my friends. I'm very close to them, so wearing different hats on the production, being a producer but being also a friend to all these people, these
Mm.
volunteers that I've now known for over 2 years.
Wow, 2 years, that's a
Yeah,
long time.
yeah.
12 hours of footage must be quite hefty to work through.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of transcribing, highlighting best bits, and you get attached to all those moments because you really do feel like you're in Chris's shoes, and you are. He had so many conversations with people there, and he really did try to convince a few people to leave, and then a few people he did persuade. So just being in those moments with him was really special, and it was really hard to pick.
Yeah, yeah, understandably. So it obviously the film showcases the story of Chris, who is the main person, main volunteer we get information about. But we also see other volunteers from other backgrounds. What happened to them?
Um, a few of them remained in Ukraine. A lot of the international ones went back home, like Daniel, or a few others do go back and forth with deliveries and aid. They'll
Mm.
drop off humanitarian aid to the border and then go back. So it's a mixed bag.
So do you still keep in touch with Daniel, Christian, Iggy?
Yeah, I do. Daniel, recently told me that he's doing much better because, I was worried about him, and I was worried how Chris's death impacted him. But he told me that he's adopted a few puppies from Ukraine, and he went back to his wife, and he's doing much better. He's obviously obsessively following the news, and he
Mm.
still cares a lot. And he was really looking forward to the film also coming out, and he had an incredible amount of footage himself, which obviously we couldn't include all the hours and hours that he
Yeah.
had filmed. But he's yeah, he's much better. And the rest, they're I stay in touch, but they're busy with other things.
Yeah, yeah.
Iggy has a great social media following.
Well, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
So, as you said, there's been so many things to choose from. Is there a particular segment that you were so happy that made the cut?
Yeah, it was actually that middle sequence, because I
Very
remember
famous middle
this
sequence.
very famous middle sequence. I remember when I saw it in Chris's footage, and I sent it to the team, and my exec in particular was like, wow, this is amazing, we have to include it, and we have to include it in its entirety. And what was amazing is that when I was first watching it, obviously I also didn't know what was gonna happen at the end, so I was at the edge of my seat. I was like, Chris, what are you doing? um get out.
Yeah,
But he just shows he has such a determined personality, and not everybody can do that. But
yeah,
he really did not want to give up. He just knew in his gut that he was going to find these people, and in the end, he does. And what I really, really uh, specifically wanted there to be in the film is that moment when he goes into the basement and the lady says, "You found me." So I thought that was kind of the climax of that whole sequence. And when I first heard it, I just started sobbing.
yeah,
And then he has a bit of a conversation with them, and he's like, "Do you know how bad it is outside?" And they say, "No, because they didn't really get out, just a bit outside." He said, "It's really bad. The whole area is completely in ruins. So you have to leave, and you have to leave now." And a few of them still stayed behind, and she tried to convince them, "You have to come now," but a few did stay behind. There were quite a few people in that basement. And then after that he went after that sequence, he went and evacuated a few more people. But it was just so dramatic. I just thought, this looks like a movie, but it's real life. And
yeah.
I think it showed his personality, just the essence of his personality. He just did not want to give up. And he always said, where there's a will, where there's a way, where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, it definitely shows the kind of person that it takes to do
Mm.
these kind of things. It's
Yeah.
yeah, watching that was really anxiety inducing. It really felt like
Yeah.
real life, which it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
still, even though I know how it ends, I still cry every time. I still get tense every time. And just to add, another clip that I really, really wanted in was the granny in a wheelchair where she calls Chris little
bunny.
bunny.
Yeah,
Yeah, that again. When I first heard that, I thought that's so special, and he just laughs in such a pure, innocent way. It was really sweet.
so as we said, this mainly focuses on volunteers from other countries who decide to help out, and why is there such a will from someone to help a country that they're not even related to? But I guess some people would be questioning about the Ukrainian voices in this documentary, which we didn't really have much as such. What would you say about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. It was something that we discussed throughout, because we wanted to have Ukrainian voices as well. We, in a way, it became more surprising to hear the stories of these international volunteers who had, as you say, no relation to Ukraine, no connection, and it felt like it was a story that we hadn't heard before. Um, and Olya, Chris's girlfriend, became such a prominent Ukrainian voice and such a prominent contributor in the film that she became a symbol in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't want to overshadow her. But yeah, there were various different considerations, and it's hard when you have 90 minutes and you want to include everything and everyone, and then you have to make really challenging and difficult decisions that
Yeah.
still hurt. because it's fair to say there's so many Ukrainians doing this themselves, and they've been doing it day in, day out since the beginning of the war. But we wanted to focus on why so many international volunteers decided to help overnight. It was almost like a strange phenomenon, but they all talked about a calling and a purpose, and that's kind of what we tried to examine.
Yeah, no, I understand that, yes. So now more about you. You primarily did writing and development, and this is your debut producer documentary. So how did it feel making this documentary and receiving such good responses from it, actually?
Yeah, it's almost surreal. I've always wanted to properly produce and then one day direct. I spent probably 10, 11 years in development, coming up with ideas and developing and getting close to contributors, only to give it to someone else. And that's always been very difficult. So to actually make this film and be with it for so long, and for it to get such amazing reviews just means a lot. Just means a lot to me. It's almost surreal, and it's a really bittersweet feeling because of the subject, because of Chris, to the point of, I find it hard to celebrate, but I find I'm proud of the journey that I've been on, and I'm proud that we got here, and I'm really, really happy that people have given so much love and support. And what I'm really, really happy about is that Chris's family is pleased with the end result, and that I felt so much responsibility towards them and Chris's legacy. So I am pleased, and it feels, I don't think probably I'll ever work on something so extremely, extremely personal. So for it to be my first proper film, it does feel incredibly special, and I feel very privileged. And I have a lot of people to thank for this.
Yeah, you definitely should be really proud of this.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. That's so sweet. Thank you.
Lastly, why documentaries?
It's funny you ask, because at the beginning of my career, I did a lot of drama and film. Even though I watched a lot of documentaries as a child, I was really into natural history. I was into current affairs and just seeing the world through the lens of TV. I found documentaries incredibly educational, and it was really, being born in Moldova, spending my first 13 years there, we couldn't travel anywhere, so documentaries was a way for me to learn about the world. And when finally I was able to enter this world and make it my home, I knew that I wanted to make programs that matter, that have a good heart, that are warm, that show people the same things documentary showed me as a child. What's happening in the world, what humanity is capable of, and is capable of good things as well. And it's a way to keep us all together and keep us more united. And I want documentaries to, there's so many different types of TV, and I also watch so many different genres, and there's so many programs that offer a different type of escapism. But documentaries that have a meaning at their core and have a message are something special, and I think it can really bring people together across the globe.
Yeah, that's such a wholesome take on documentaries. Yeah. Wow.
I have a very wholesome side to me.
Yeah.
I quite like wholesome documentaries.
Yeah, no, we can see that.
Like warm and love and friendship, and can we please get along now?
Yeah, exactly.
And help each other.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
Well, it was nice talking to you about this documentary and about you, and it was nice having you here. Thank you for giving us insight about this.
Oh, thank you, Paulina.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. Thank you. I think it's really nice. And not to make myself sound really old because I'm 34, but I would really love for young people to watch this, and the message is not like go to the front line. That is not the message. The message is, we can all make a difference in little ways, that it's a life can every single life means something, and it's important, and we shouldn't lose hope. We shouldn't lose hope. And it's also opened my world to volunteering, and then there's so many different types of volunteering that you can do. So, even in your local neighborhood. So that is something that I hope that people will also take from this. And that young people can change the world, and young people are good, and give them some flack.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And now the sun is really
yeah,
nice.
it's really hot.
Bye.
Bye.